Hello guys and girls, how you going? Screezilla here, and we are in the Hotchkiss H35 here on the test range. And I'm going to be checking out all the vehicles now. I'm going to be doing a bit of a test drive of all the tanks in the game. So the Hotchkiss is a very small tank, a very light French tank, sort of would be fighting the Panzer IIs and Panzer IIIs of the day. I did fight Panzer IVs as well. The Panzer IVs had a bit of a tough time penetrating the frontal armour of it. The biggest issue though is you've got a very small gun. Although you can penetrate, the damage is very, very poor. It's going to take you a lot of shots to do anything. And this is going to be the story of French tanks, I feel, up until you get to maybe tier 3. The Hotchkiss is not too bad for speed. I say it's what you expect, really. It's not super fast. It's got a hand-cranked turret. It's only a single gunner in there, commander loader, so very slow reload rates. But it's not terrible. It's not a very stable gun, as you can see driving. We've got a lot of gun bouncing, so firing on the move will be hard. We have got the machine gun on board, which does absolutely nothing. But it will be good to show a person's position. Yeah, the Hotchkiss. Let's return to the hangar. You may hear drums in the background, that's my housemate. If you're watching the Resident Evil playthrough, you know her. So let's take out the AMC-34. As I say, I'm very disappointed. If you watched my last video, you'll know I'm a bit disappointed in what we've got. This, you may think, looks like a Russian tank. Well, kind of is. The Russians developed this thing with the French, and then they took it back to Russia for development. So we've got a 47mm gun on this, decent high explosive filler charged shells. Not terrible there, actually. Pretty good damage from the gun. Pretty poor velocity though, so they're not going to be great. The thing with the French tanks is they're going to have very good armour but very poor guns. Wow, okay, I can't hit it. Got Stormtrooper aiming going on right now. There we go. So when you get used to that gun, it's going to be very deadly. Because you're going to be facing Panzer IIs and Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs, things like that with this. Well, not this, you're mainly going to be fighting reserve tanks, but, you know, you've got that punch to destroy most reserve tanks, which is good. Good. Which is what you want for a reserve tank. Now, before we go on, something I do want to test out is the Lorraine here. Unfortunately, I ran out of Eagles to unlock the Foch, because I wanted to drive that Foch, because that thing is fun. But the Lorraine is sort of its earlier variant. So, this thing is huge. But it's got good speed. As you'll notice, it's actually got tyres for its road wheels. So it's very stable on the ground. It's a neat little vehicle. The speed of it is what really goes for it though. Even though this thing is the size of a small plane, let's just compare the sizes here up against this Panzer II, which is notably a small tank. But you can see the size of this thing is pretty big, in length at least. You know, it's a big target from the top and from the side, but it's very low profile. The other thing is it has very good gun depression. So you've got good gun depression, you've got very high velocity shells. Let's shoot downrange at the Tiger II, sorry, the Panther there. No explosive filler, but boy howdy does that have some punch to it. Not the fastest reload in the world, but it's a tank destroyer, and it's not that slow. Remember, the crew's not trained here, so This thing can be pretty deadly once the crew's trained up? The crew is trained up. Let's fire at the Jagdtiger down there. That's a bit short. Oopsie doodle. So very similar to the Foch. The Foch does have the 120mm gun though, so it's a bit more punch. But again, it doesn't have any explosive filler in its shell. I was concerned to see how that would go. You see, in that circumstance, that could have caused a lot more damage if we had the explosive filler. Let's just fire at the Tiger here as well. Sloppy shot. But we're getting some explosions from the ammo, so that's good news. So yeah, this thing is pretty. This thing's going to be pretty deadly on the battlefield. If you saw in my last video as well, it's got very good armor to it as well. So kind of looking forward to the Foch. Must admit that thing's going to be pretty deadly. Anyway, let's get back to it. So we've seen the Hotchkiss really. This is the 35, so this is the 37mm variant. So this is the one we had at the start, had the 75mm or 76mm gun. Very short barrel gun though. Good velocity, but it does lose it over time. The short barreled guns are pretty useless. As you can see, the barrel length is very, very low on these things. Now we've got APCR in this tank, so we have got good penetrative ability, but the shell is tiny. Absolutely tiny little shell in there. Speed and mobility is not too bad, but the thing is trying to kill a tank with these shells, you're going to have to kill all the crew or get an ammo rack every time. So right there we've got a nice shot, but as you can see it's just very, very hard to do much with it. But you will be able to penetrate the front of those tanks. Okay, let's return to the hangar. Gonna get used to seeing this screen today, aren't we? DFCM36. Again, this has got the 37mm gun, so we know what the gun's going to be like. We'll take it out for a quick test drive though. So I'm just going to take everything out that I can for a quick test drive, just to really show what they look like in respect, so we can just get a bit of an idea. So it's a small tank, but it does have a very high profile. It looks almost like a pyramid, this tank. It's a very strange looking vehicle. Not bad on speed, it's got good ground resistance. You've got the track guards, it's almost like a little mini Matilda. But again, you're going to have the same problems, you know. The APCR is not going to do much. You know, you're not going to have huge amounts of damage done. But the good thing is you're going to have armour that will be able to stop their rounds from causing you damage, from the front at least. From the side, you will struggle a little bit. You know, you are going to have problems. The other thing is, if you do get penetrated and one of your crew members dies, it's the end of the game for you, because you only have 2 crew members. So the Panzer II here, ricochet just there. Fair enough, that was quite angled. But firing, let's just fire around at a turret there, which is pretty tough. Okay, we didn't get a penetration there. Should get a penetration through the flat though. No. Okay, interesting. We can't penetrate the front of these. As I said, they're going to be quite tricky to play, just because they've got such low velocity guns, and it's really going to affect how well they do in combat. So, if you get on a front engagement with any sort of tank, you're going to have problems penetrating them, obviously. Side, we should be able to penetrate here. There we go. Once you do get through, you can cause some damage, but it's just very, very small amounts of damage. You know, if you penetrate, you're not going to do a huge amount of damage with these things. And that's going to be the story for most of the tier 1 tanks, in all honesty. Okay, we'll head back. Let's take out the AMR-35 ZT3. Now this is the little tank destroyer, and this thing is interesting. It's got very good penetration, but it's got a very small round. It's only got a 25mm gun, and it is tiny as well. Think of the ASU-57. This thing's about the same size as that. It might even actually be smaller. Yeah, this thing is a tiny, tiny little tank destroyer. So, for sneaking around, this thing's going to be amazing. If you've got grass on, look, you can barely see it through the grass. But, you've got a very, very small round, which will penetrate. But when it does penetrate, it's not going to cause huge amounts of damage inside. Very fast reload, though. That's the thing on this thing. It is basically a auto cannon. You know, you've got a very high rate of fire. So this thing basically worked on the sort of fire fast with good penetration. Don't need to have good explosion filler. Now the cupola up there is going to be the biggest weak spot for you. That's going to, if that wasn't there, this tank would be amazingly sneaky. But even so, this thing is going to be super, super sneaky. Let's just fire angled at the front. Angle we're not going to go through. Let's just go front on though. And remember, with the 37mm we weren't going through. With the 25mm we go straight through. This thing has really good penetration, as I say. So this thing is going to be an absolutely deadly little tank destroyer. Just because of its size, what I'd suggest is you just go for the engines first. Just always go for an engine kill. We're going to have to penetrate the Panther. But you're going to have some good ability with this thing. It's not great, but it's not terrible. You think, oh, this thing's going to be awful, but if you get a lucky ammunition hit like we did there at range, which wasn't that hard, you know, the velocity is really good on these rounds because they are so small, this thing is going to be really impressive. It has no armor, but you don't need it when you're that small. Okay then, next on to rank 2. So, the AMC-35, 47mm gun, the SA-35, so, again, it's not great penetration. It has got upped penetration from the tier 1s though, because it does have a bit more explosive filler in it, so it has got better velocity. This is a much bigger tank as well. You've got a 3-man crew in here. Little prophetic machine gun, but the main thing is the round has got much better punch to it. Tank's not that slow. It's a fast, sort of light scout tank as well. So you know, it's not the worst tank to have in a game. So, you know, it will work pretty well in that respect. Missed that shot, yeah. Good rate of fire still, even better than some of the tier 1s because, well, you've got that loader. I think they're speaking Japanese. Might be French. Okay, yeah, it was French. I thought I had Japanese there for a second. But the rate of fire is good, the penetration is good, the armour is not terrible. This is going to be a okay little scout tank for tier 2. Not the fastest tank though, so you're not going to be able to outflank like the Locust, and some of the other scout tanks, but it's not going to be terrible. The Sommel S-35. Now this thing is really well armoured. The armour on this thing is going to be the main thing. The gun is terrible. Same gun as last time. So, you know, it's not awful, but it's not great. But the big thing here is the armour. Now, we've got a 3-man crew here with the front second driver, but your gunner, commander, and loader is all at the top of the turret. So at least you're not going to get one shot if one of your crew members dies. The speed's not bad on this tank. It's a very narrow track tank, very narrow vehicle. So it will be able to fit into some interesting hiding spots, but it is quite a high profile again, which again is a problem with French tanks. The gun, same as last time, pretty good handling. The turret is quite slow just because of the fact it's a hand-cranked turret. The reload is atrocious as well. So, it's not terrible. The thing about this tank though is the armour, and that armour is going to protect you from most tanks at this rank. I think people are going to get very frustrated with French tanks and the fact that you will stop most of the shells, but you're not going to be able to kill many things. Sherman, we know what that is. Let's take out the Canon Haute-Mer D75, the SAR 40. So, again, little French tank destroyer. This thing is pretty ugly, and the cupola is pretty useless. But you do have a machine gun that you can use to fire all the way around. You also do have a washing line on this tank, which is really useful. So if you do want to do your laundry while you're tanking, you can do it with this tank, as you can see. So, the main thing with this though is you've got the 75mm with a high explosive high explosive filler on it, with some good penetration. Reload's not terrible, all things considering. Gun handles pretty well. The speed though is not great. The armour's not bad from the front of this tank though. It has got some decent armour with that cast hull again. It helps with the actual armouring. Again, it's quite a low tank, so it's going to be quite sneaky, apart from the washing line and the cupola. The machine gun's absolutely useless. As you can see, it has no elevation either, so for planes, it's pretty much useless as well. I think your main gun's actually got better elevation than your secondary, which is impressive. But the thing is, this has very good depression as well, if I remember correctly. Although depression is never good. So, as you see here, the depression is actually quite decent on this tank, so you will be able to work ridge lines, things like that, quite well. So you sort of can use that armour to your advantage. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Okay, moving on. Now, I wish I could look at all the vehicles. Unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount of money, so I can't unlock the rest of the vehicles. I would like to have unlocked the Foch and the AMX 30. But, oh well. Things happen. So where are we? So we've done those. Don't need to look at those. The Jumbo, we know what a Jumbo's like. Don't need to worry about that. The M4A4 SA50, give it a test drive. This is the French 75mm cannon on board, so it's a bit like a Firefly, really. It's an Israeli tank. Again, everything you expect from a Sherman, really. Shot. You know, what can you say about it? It's just a Sherman with a French gun. It's a shame we're not getting the 105mm Libertaire. It was 105 the Libertaire. It's 105mm Sherman. Of course, no stabilisation on this thing because it's just so long. Well, no real stabiliser. It's stable enough, but it's yeah, it's just normal Sherman levels of performance, really. It has got the different counterbalance at the back, so that does help a little bit with the stabilisation. So that's why the back looks a little bit different. It has a slightly different counterbalance to the gun. But yeah, not much more to say on this, really. It's just a Sherman with a French gun. The premium, I did take that out in my last video, if you didn't see it. Yeah, the gun handling's interesting on that one. We'll see with the turret, especially on this AMX-13. Let's take it out for a test drive. So, with these turrets, because they've got this lip around them to protect the neck and things like that, but the turret moves itself. So the gun doesn't move up and down, the turret moves the gun up and down. The gun's basically moulded into the turret itself. But what happens with this is we'll fire, and you get a lot of kickback from the gun. So it's sort of it's got its pros and its cons, so to say. The shell isn't great velocity, so as you see here, you do have to do quite a lot of aiming. The shell velocity is pretty poor, actually, which is a shame. Penetration's not terrible. You are going to get through Panthers and Tigers and things like that from the side, but you're going to need to be basically cranking your neck right back to get through them. The other thing is, when you're on the move, this type of turret is not great because there's no stabilisation to it, so it's not very stable when you're moving. It's not bad, but it is not overly stable when you start hitting bumps. So, yeah, that's I'm interested to see how it goes. Interesting thing with the French, they like their turrets to move rather than the guns. French, they're just weird, man. Okie dokie. Next up, we will be looking at the Lorraine 40T, the French heavy tank. It's a medium tank, really, but it was classified as heavy for the French. Very little armour, but it has got the autoloader in it. So this thing has an autoloader, 12-shot autoloader. It's a pretty looking tank. It's got the pike nose. Very interesting design. You've got the turret that moves, which gives the gun relatively good depression, as you can see. So again, the depression on these things is really good, but as you can see, it's just very slow to get everything moving up and down. So the vertical movement is pretty poor. But this has a lot better velocity on the shells. See, we made mincemeat of that Panther pretty quickly. The shot time is still pretty poor. You know, it's not terrible, but you're going to be able to fire about 12 shots per minute. But the thing is, though, you've only got I think this is only an 8-shot autoloader. So once you've shot your load, you're going to have a hard time. And if you want to just switch to high explosive shells, you're going to have a hard time. But with this one clip, we've taken out 1, 2, 3 tanks, 4 tanks. Okay, so it's a 7-shot autoloader. There we go. And now we come for our long reload. And as you can see, there's the loading carousel there. It's almost like a 6-shooter gun belt. You know, it just clips in, fire, 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 clips out, and then reloads. Again, the reload time wasn't that bad for these autoloaders. It took a bit of time because they were quite heavy, but it's... I don't know how well it's going to work, in all honesty. I'm going to be interested to see how well these go in the actual combat phases. We're reloaded. Boom. The tank's not terribly slow. It's pretty manoeuvrable, as I say. Aiming on the move is not great. As you can see, again, we get a lot of bumps, especially from the side. The gun is good. This is 100mm gun, off the top of my head. I'm trying to think. The gun is good, but it's not. It's not great. I was expecting more armoured cars and things like that for the French. So yeah, the 100mm gun. I was expecting more armoured cars, more interesting vehicles, and we've really not got that. So yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment. I really wish I could take these out for a test drive. Oh, actually, wait, if I order this... take out the AMX 90mm variant, at least. So unfortunately I used up my Eagles a bit too quickly on these things. I was hoping to... I should have really unlocked this first, or this first, you know, just so I could get the use of the 7.3 tank, or the Foch. But let's take out the 7.0 light tank. So a 90mm gun. Again, we got the autoloader. Interesting to see how this goes. This thing's got some big guns on it though, so it's a fast-moving mobile gun platform. And we've got heat. We've got heat fin stabilised with this tank as well, so we've got 310mm of penetration anywhere we go. So we've got 12 rounds. So no worries about reloading the autoloader because we only have 12 shots. Of course, if you take less high explosive shells, then you'll have 24 shots in total. The antenna on this thing are ridiculously huge. You're going to get spotted with those antenna most of the time, I reckon. Fast-moving tank, though. As I said, the armour on this thing's not bad. But we have got that counter-levered turret once more. No stabilisation again. No, very, very wobbly on the move. So you're not going to be able to really take shots on the move accurately. Get there eventually. We'll fire off the infamous to see how we go. So we can kill a mouse with this thing, so that's good news. Let's say the rate of fire is good, but the kickback on the gun is ridiculous. You know, that's going to be the biggest problem with these French tanks, is just the kickback of the guns. 12,000 meters there. You know, every shot you're going to have to re-aim, you have to reposition, and that's the problem with these guns, is there's such a high kickback there. Yeah, all in all, this tank is not bad, but the kickback is the kicker. You know, just watch the whole tank move. We'll just fire from a stationary position here. We'll fire front-facing at the moose. As you see, when you stop, you just got that rocking. So let's fire. And you can just see how much the tank rocks and moves back. It's very hard to get an aim on this thing. Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how it goes in live, because it's going to be very hard to play. You're going to have to be stationary for a few seconds before you can fire it off for sure. Well, I guess that brings me to the end of this video, because I can't do any more test driving. As I say, I really wish I could take out the Foch. Unfortunately, I can't unlock any more vehicles. The AMX 30 looks really interesting though. It's a really pretty battle tank, main battle tank. It looks modern, it looks sleek, it looks cool. So I'm looking forward to playing with that at some stage too. Alright guys, until next time, this is... Oh, wait, I forgot one tank, didn't I? I forgot the one anti-aircraft vehicle in the game. let's just take her out with the 40mm Bofors cannon. So the French's anti-aircraft vehicle. Typical Bofors, 40mm, just, you know, womp, 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 womp. Not great rate of fire, but not terrible. Velocity's okay. Can't hit a thing with this thing though. I'm trying to use the marker. But this thing is huge. Look at it. We do get a good look at the French tankers though. So the French tank crew, they kind of look neat. But yeah, this thing is going to be attacked from the air a lot. It's pretty easy to spot, in all honesty. Let's try and shoot down this BF-110. Hit at least. Pretty poor maneuverability of the gun. You're going to struggle with fast-moving aircraft, and even struggling with the F-110, as you can see. Just getting it on speed is very hard. But, of course, people aren't going to use it to shoot down aircraft, are they? Why would you use a AAA vehicle for that? This is going to be used to shoot up tanks. And for that, I'm going to be pretty hopeless with this stock round because it's HE filler. But once you get the main round in, it's going to have some pretty good penetrative abilities. Hopefully it's going to kill on this plane eventually. As I say, the gun moves very slowly. It's not great. Yeah, not great. I think this is just... Oh no, we've got the arm piercing and the high explosive in here, so apparently we should be able to penetrate a tank. There we go. So, high explosive useless, the armor piercing good. So, you know, you're going to be able to penetrate most things with this gun. At your BR, because it's got a very high penetration value to it, almost 76mm I think, so, you know, you'll be able to cause some damage on the battlefield, but it has no armor whatsoever, and a light gun is going to absolutely wreck you. For taking out airplanes, not that great. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. This is the Screezeler out. Bye bye.